Yes, it is. All right. So welcome, everybody. My name is Caitlin. I'm the events coordinator here at Square Books in Oxford, Mississippi. We're gathered here this evening to celebrate Gumbo Ya Ya, written by Aurielle Marie. She's joined in conversation by Julian Randall, who many of you may know. He's MFA student and an alum now at the University of Mississippi, but now he's back in Chicago. We miss him all the time. Before I hand it off to them, I would like to tell you about a couple upcoming events that we have in the next week or so. I'll try to be brief. So tomorrow, this is for locals, Thursday, October 21st, Thacker Mountain is back at the Old Armory Pavilion. This is an open air space. There's plenty of room for social distancing. You can bring a picnic. Please bring your own chair. We're not bringing them, but we are bringing books. Books written by the man, the myth, the legend, our pal, old school blues and R&B powerhouse, Bobby Rush. He'll be reading from his memoir, I Ain't Studying Ya, My American Blues Story. He's also going to be pulling double duty and performing as a musical guest on Thacker. He will be joined by singer-songwriter Caleb Garrett and our house band, the Yellow Bushwhackers. You can visit our website for links to listen remotely, and you may also purchase a signed or personalized copy by visiting squarebooks.com or just giving us a call. Next week, Monday, October 26th at 6 p.m., we have a spooky Zoom. You can join 3 YA Scream Queens, Erin A. Craig, Elizabeth Lim, and Victoria Lee for a spooky panel celebrating Erin's latest novel, Small Favors. It's a mesmerizing and chilling fairy tale-esque novel about a young woman in a small town with monsters lurking in the trees and dark desires hidden in the shadows. Then Tuesday, October 26th at 6 p.m., we'll still be on Zoom, and we will be celebrating a wonderful debut novel by Jean Kwok. It's called Go Home, Ricky. It's a fresh satirical novel about masculinity and tenderness, fatherhood and motherhood, all set in the world of semi-professional wrestling. He's going to be joined in conversation by novelist and a Square Books alum, Michael Bible. Lots of different readers will really enjoy this, but it is a must not miss for our Barry Hannah fans. But enough about them. I would like to tell you about the two wonderful people gracing your Zoom screen. Aurielle Marie is a Black and queer essayist, poet, and cultural strategist hailing from the Deep South. A 2019 Plowshares Emerging Writer Award recipient, she's received invitations to fellowships from many literary institutions, including Lambda Literary, Vana Voices, and Tin House. Her work is featured in Tri-Quarterly, Southeast Review, Black Warrior, and other journals. Aurielle Marie writes and speaks about Blackness, bodies, sex, and pop culture from a Black feminist lens. I also buried the lead. This is a Cave Canem Award-winning debut collection of poetry, something that she has in common with Julian. A little more about Julian. He's a living queer Black poet from Chicago. He has received fellowships from Cave Canem, Contamundo, Callaloo, Boat, Tin House, Milkweed Editions, and The Watering Hole. Julian is the recipient of a Pushcart Prize, the winner of the 2019 Betty Berzon Emerging Writer Award from the Publishing Triangle, and the 2019 Frederick Bach Prize. His poetry has been published in New York Times Magazine, Plowshares and Poetry, and anthologized in the Breakbeat Poets, Volume 4, Nepantla, and Furious Flower. His essays have appeared in Vibe, Black Nerd Problems, and other venues. He holds an MFA in poetry from Ole Miss. He is the author of Refuse, Pit Poetry, also Arielle's publisher for Gumbo Ya Ya, fall 2018, winner of the 2017 Cave Canem Poetry Prize, and a finalist of the 2019 AANCP Image Award. And last, certainly not least, he's the author of the middle grade novel Pilar Ramirez and the Escape from Zalfa, which will be published by Holt in March of 2022. Whew, two very accomplished poets on your screen today. I think y'all heard enough from me. So I'm going to pass it on to them. If y'all have any questions for either Arielle or Julian, please submit them in the Q&A and I will come back later on to moderate those. Thank y'all both so much. Really appreciate you joining us this evening. All right, have fun.
Yo, what's good, Oxford?
Hey, y'all. Thanks so much for having us, Square Books.
Oh, fam, I am so excited to get into this with you. I've been rereading it all day. So I'm just gonna like read real quick, reread real quick, and then we're gonna start getting into this conversation because like there's so much to unpack.
So very excited. Let's do it. Let's do it. I'm excited. I haven't heard you read in a while because pandemic. So let's do it.
Girl, me either. All right, cool. Obama wants to be clear about his legacy. Let me be clear as a water stain on glass, nearly window, but not bulletproof. I want some things to always be constant. Legacy is muzzled by history with good reason. Let me be clearer still. A persistent film of dew on dying grass, opacity is a form of treason. I got envelopes with a thin gold, and sometimes my own dead face unspools, and men in suits rush in because it would be a tragedy if I remembered that I was someone who could die. Let me be clearer still. My blood necessitates repetition. I am gone, I am gone, I am gone. I am grateful that the room was round, or I would have dented it with my screams. Gratitude is a kind of violence. I say thank you, and that yawns into a bomb. Everything I do with a grace which has only ever been described as bestial, a gazelle or a swan. I'm a precise kind of fugitive. When I was born, history stuttered and I lacquer my palms with the silence. I think it's impossible not to miss it. Despite everything, I give white people hope. Nothing will ever demand me to be this merciless again. That dried my mouth out more than I thought it would.
We gotta practice.
Now, like you had me really going with these epigraphs, so I also wanted to do something with some epigraphs. So this one goes out to anybody who's ever been Black and hungry at the same time. It's called "You Got McDonald's Money," and it starts with a quote. I don't even want you to look at nothing, so you got to go in there with your eyes closed. Bernie Mac. My father told me two things, a religion of sorts. One, don't eat these white folks' food when there's food in the house. And two, stop starving yourself. You're making it look like I don't feed you. And he did. For years, I did not dream of empty, but chose it in the name of purity. I learned hunger and whiteness in the same place. I know how to refuse and not mean it. The only evidence, a fist beneath the table, 4 half moons sitting in my empty palm. Everything my mouth does is a sin, a windowless church swallowing the breeze. I drip, no thank you, by instinct. If I'm hungry, I'm nobody's child. If I never kissed the fingers of a foreign hand, I would have made for an exceedingly small casket. I still might. And then probably like one last quick one from Refuse. Yeah, let's go with this one. Negrotopia number 3. Self-portrait is heaven. Cue the Anthony Hamilton and name me a mansion. Tell everyone there is space here. If you believe in the reincarnated, I am already somewhere that somebody has gone after they died, so I am heaven. Cue the gold clouds, the gospel songs, the voices you didn't know you missed until you heard them for the first time. Watch me glitter, watch me gold, watch me be exactly the show you were promised. Forget what tried to kill you. Just for a second, forget its name and only remember that it missed. Cue the wings, cue the rain. I promise this is not the end. I promise we get to be everywhere now. I promise that the only heaven that can hold us is us. Actually, yeah, sorry, I was wrong. One more poem from Refuse real quick. Sad Nigga Manifesto, after Terrence Hayes. I won't blunt my blade for cut these chains. Rather let my limbs be drugged through the mud. Frank Ocean. Some songs can only be the orange echo of a western sky. Something is always spilling and the heat mops it up before the stain even has a chance to name itself. I was born exhausted, fleeing. I am coming to you live from a Negro spiritual born with dust in its veins and little else. Melody of heat lightning threading the space between desert and stars. Let's say what's real. I'm a sad nigga come from a long line of sad niggas. I am coming to you live from a generation of thirst. Everyone I know is trying to fit their calluses around the throat of grief. It seems like it has come to this. It seems like it has only ever been this. What is abandoned and trying to leave sadness as if it is the lonely opera of a daylit storm. My family, I am coming to you live from straddling a noteless tragedy. I am wandering through a harmony built from bloodlines and humidity and the tenderness only fugitives can claim. It took a precise sequence of sins to make me, and I am giving none of them back. Only a mouth can cure a mouth. A man is singing in the distance, and he too is a sad nigga come from a lineage of the unforgiven. I want to find him. I want to manifest destiny, my own sadness, thirst to shining thirst, shame to shining shame. If I find him, we will hum as if we are bullets discovering the labor of bullets. Heat lightning, unspooling amethyst. Until death do I part from the life I have tarnished with my living. And one last piece of new shit, and then the fun part, which is I get to see you read. I wanted to dedicate, so much of what I loved in your book was paying tribute towards this like unbreakable lineage. And you make me always want to reconsider what it means to be from somewhere and of something. And it's just such a joy to now know that we have like definitive, like the collection is here, like it's here. I'm geeking out way ahead of my time, but all that to say that I see lineage clearer because of you. And I wanted to tribute this poem to my grandmother. The Zero Country. Ungrieved, bird song divides the morning by its vowels. Horizon, a mitosis of utter darkness. Petty stars yielding above where once you, now, never again. Indignity, that beauty persists in the absence of enemy. Blood honey of the rising day, your elegy gifting your portrait its right colors. I resent the morning, the sounds that citizen it. No, I resent the mourning, the synonyms made by distance, misunderstanding, deception, trees fused at the same root muscle, split by the same lie, narrative, a tattoo, Greenville, and all the memory sepia by virtue of cowardice, but whose? The way I tell the story, my great-grandfather ran with you in his arms like a loaf of bread, but really, there must have been a train somewhere between the evidence you were and the complexity you grew to be, somewhere between light skin and passing, between feather and blade. What did those years hurtling through the daughter you were do to the daughter I never grew to be? Unknowable, the morning, the dread sugar tunneling through the cavity sweetness that cuts both ways. I have been trying to find a way to gown without shrouding, and still elegy, still failure. What did I see to be except where I was told to run? I don't know if there is anything crueler than the weight of cruelties we forget how to tell. Blew my mask. Sorry about that. I don't know if there's anything crueler than the weight of cruelties we forget how to tell. Blew my mask, blew your casket, blew the eyes of the man I imagined discovered you were never a white man's daughter, blew the distance, blew my love, blew your final dragging a stretch of sky on and into the soil, grief, a variation of stateless, yet stated, a state I will never know if you remembered enough to miss birds that gown the morning. I look back, not Lot's wife, but transfigured by the gaze of warrantless heat. Oh, fugitive, my grandmother, saint of closed fists, born in Mississippi, terrain where the magnolia drifts to clay with an assassin's glamour. Honey, despite September, enough. There is a daughter within me too, and I fear what she may grow me into. Where's your face? I pull gowns from my throat in the right company until my palms are rich with petals. Inheritance despite July. Oh, expected theft. I am the ruler of my own silence, body not always a lie, but only sometimes a truth, heir of your survivals and the heady perfume of history that can be created but never destroyed. Dawn upon dawn, unvowed, I call the daughter I never was by the slow bird of your name. Whew. Thanks. I'm not done. All right.
All right. Thank you so much, Wu. I just think today I'm gonna read a couple of excerpts from Gumbo Ya Ya, the title poem inside of the book. So there is an epigraph in this one, of course. There's an epigraph in every poem in this book. But this is from Madame Louisa Tiche's book, Jambalaya. And she writes, "It's important, sisters, that you understand what Gumbo Ya Ya means. A cacophony of sound, like a swarm of bees, is moving in my direction." Gumbo Ya Ya. The original metric for rigor was a single torso of wood, made bolt, stuffed full of our mothers and our sons. No matter. It was only our ending. It is how our story begins. Every poem either breathes it or buries it. Don't worry. I am not here to make a citizen's arrest. I don't believe in the jails or form. I believe in the freedom of breaking. This is a simple poem about criticality, reader. I promise. The pure animal of labor or honest hustle. What it takes to turn a woman into a mule and then a man and then a match. Heifer was my mother's name before she made me. My mother is no thief, though the product of it. My mother gave birth to marauders. My mother came here to cash this speech in for fresh vegetables. I was only allotted my time. I was instructed to say thank you. Gratitude is tricky math. I'd like to thank the Academy for carving open my head. I'd like to thank the Academy for splitting my tongue. I recognize that my work is all gristle. Thank you, America, for stealing the meat. What's the pronunciation of my name? This shit hard and it fly about as far as I can throw the pen. My mouth slip and I rig or ring my jaw into chrome spinners. The asphalt melts and I chew tobacco. That first summer is where we left it out to dry, and damn, I said what the fuck I said. I never stutter lest we talk in clarity. I say I write gully and mean I write the wing back onto the bird a lip thing, and I said it before. I ain't said it yet, but the mouth is a scythe. I ain't gonna tell you how, but I break what English can't repair into a slice of thunder. I bees myself, then I bees a net of small blade. Intersectionality, a murder of crows, a gang of Black boys, alternative title, Ars Poetica, and the things we are organized into or jails. Reader, consider the Kwansaba, a poem in which you celebrate all the Black you either is or ain't. See also, I have only my two hands, bloodied into their rawness, marrow, my hands, mirror hands, stethoscopes, suture hands, in particular structure. I am broken, my sisters have broken me open, born spine shudder, born wild, born dead, the Black girl, born bullet scissor, born throat thread, sin spun, she ain't Black girl, in fact, dead grout, ghoul grit, iron butter, oak stain, is unhung, is 4 years old. Is 4 years old. Is 4 years old. 4 years old. I imagine and acknowledge a future iteration of reality that thrives without dependence on racial, gendered, economic oppression. I don't know what it looks like. Has anyone ever written a poem without being told it was possible? Did the rest of the world Read it. This is how I know white women cherish their tears above my life. I am no girl. I am an argument of crows into the evening's face, cloud bruised and trying to find something for my hand to ruin after the call you ain't never supposed to get. I'm a Bible filled with stories of sacrifice and no salvation. What with all these holy palms and so many bodies on the battlefield, I'm here drinking my father's wine, pretending to be grown. I'm some kind of child bride for the evening's entertainment. I welt easy, but do not shatter in the rain. Oh, Sunday. Oh, sap, oh, syrup slick, oh, sinner south, oh, honey child, snake blood, young liquor, new drunk, child whiskey. I call to you, marrow of some strange Christ, mother of all the hood gatherings. The opposite of flying is death. The opposite of falling is death. The opposite of death is a skin knee and only a skin knee. Oh, summer. Oh, summer, I claim the swollen air and am denied. I bury my young pulpy brothers in a blanket and kiss them goodbye, even with a clear heaven over my head. As the sun bears upon us her brilliant mouth, I imagine this all why Tamir's mama cries, her disbelief slick in its torrents, a hand raising toward a window, a suspicion that God is laughing. I mean, Gumbo Ya Ya. I mean, no soup for your mouth, but sustenance in a new world. I mean, take from me my breath, but never my audacity. I mean, we don't die. I said, we don't die. We just multiply, 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 multiply. Gumbo Ya Ya, and I do mean whatever the fuck a body does, dancing into a void, a joyful noise, a mournful smile, a body slack or slicken at the opposite end of a line, break tradition and become the whole black dirt beneath my nail, a sound so smooth it's Harlem. It's an island off the coast of the Carolinas. It's Christmas and I'm holy. This here is a freedom song and I do not know why a cage thing would ever sing my name. This is a freedom song and I know not why a cage could ever sing my name. This is a freedom song and I know not why a cage thing would ever sing my name, would ever sing my name, ever sing my name, sing my name, sing my name. That's that one.
Y'all gonna get them pre-orders in or what? That's what I really need to know. Or actually, no, we're not even pre-orders no more because we here. We here in this moment, right?
Actual orders, real live actual orders.
Ooh, good Lord, it feels good to hold this thing in my hand.
Oh, yo. It's been a journey, ain't it? A journey and a half.
Lord, I know it has. I know it has, man. I know it has. All right, cool. So where to even let's start there. Let's start at our conceptualization of beginning, because I think that's one thing that I like, and that immediately like jumps off the page to me in this book, like in a very literal way, right? That we get to the content, and from the moment that we get to this definition of Gumbo Ya Ya, we have already like entered the voice of the speaker. And that was kind of what was always so fascinating to me about seeing where you chose to epigraph, where you chose not to epigraph, what angles from which, like we see sometimes visuals dripping over from one page on into another. And I'm thinking about that and the fact that both of us come from a slam tradition where we had to really sit and consider with like how the poem sat in our bodies also had something to do with where the poem began, right? In terms of where it made context. I wanted to talk to you a bit about how do you figure out the beginnings of poems? Where do you find the beginnings of books? How do you find yourself entering into that space? Because I know you were also talking a little bit at the top of the pandemic about ritual. Yeah. And it's always so fascinating to hear you talk about that. So I know it's like 8 questions in one.
No, I love it.
I'm gonna promise I'm gonna slow down.
No, it's okay. So yeah, I think so the weird thing about my relationship to poems is that I can never tell if I'm writing them or if the poem is writing me. And so that does some funky things to beginnings. I usually feel called to return to an idea or a thought and it always feels like it's on accident. It always feels like, oh, what's this little thing, this little phrase is sticking out, this little idea, this image that's in my mind. And out of that, the whole body of the poem kind of chews itself sideways. I feel like, oh, this is so corny, but so if you've seen SpongeBob, you know that there's a thing, there's Doodle Bob. And you remember the little doodle drawing? And he kind of draws himself into being on the page. Like he takes the pen, the art, like SpongeBob will draw the arm. This is terrible and so niche. But Doodle Bob will take the pencil and then will like draw the rest of his body. And sometimes that feels like what the poem is doing. Oh my God, Square Books, I love you so much.
God bless. God bless. Incredible.
And I feel like sometimes it's, you know, I especially love Gumbo Ya Ya because it gave me permission to start at the end or start in the middle of an idea and decide after it was all said and done where the beginning was. In fact, the title poem is pretty much the like remnants of poems that are older than Gumbo Ya Ya, that are like a part of the things that I wrote that, you know, may not have made it in totality to the final, you know, print of the book, but were my earliest understandings of what ideas were happening inside of the book. And so in that way, it's the oldest poem in the book and the poem that knew itself and articulated itself the earliest, but it's the last thing to be finalized in the text. So I think of it a lot as like, you know, you mentioned ritual, and I think a part of ritual is incantation and like the repetition of an idea or the continual consideration of an idea. And for me, that's a translinear concept. It's not, you know, you say multiply so many times that you don't really know where the end of the word or the beginning of the word is. It's just like this repetition of whatever it brings up for you, whatever it conjures for you. And I could go on and on about this in like, you know, abstract for a long time. But yeah, I think at the end of I think what's most true is that I think linear time is a lie. And I think the poem and the collection, no, that's awful. Sorry. I thought I was on Do Not Disturb. We're having so many Mercury and retrograde moments right now. And it's supposed to be over. But yeah, I just think that the poem is a place to explore what can happen on the page outside of time. Yeah.
No doubt. Okay, so I that fits and like augments like what my next question was going to be, because I was really wanted to talk about like incantation as a mode for you, and how do you see actually, yeah, I think this is a better way of phrasing this. What to you is the relationship, if they are like separate concepts in any way for you, between invocation and incantation? I'm thinking especially about how this kind of incantation and transfiguration, almost like a hex quality, right? Yeah. That stems itself through these girl gospel poems that are threaded throughout the book. And I'm curious about that. And like, yeah, we can talk more about like that as like a rhetorical mode that I feel like so often is like bringing you into this ecstatic imagining, which is just such a delight to move through.
Yeah, I think that my earliest understandings of like hollowed space or hollowed noise or holiness or whatever that may be, whatever all the metaphors for the word, is like that sort of like repetition of sound in like the church space where like after the song is over, it, you know, the choir just kind of keeps going, and will continue to will continue to, you know, build, like soar, swell. And the poems really, I think, gave me a space to kind of return to the idea of ritual and the processing of an idea, the articulation of a thought with just the sound. And I think that I'm having such a hard time articulating this because I feel kind of caught up in just that emotion, that idea that sound can get you to the end of when there are no words, when there's, there really isn't a word for the way that, structural violence feels. There really isn't a space for there isn't a good way to articulate what it means to be Black, or what it means to be femme, or what it means to live at those intersections. But I can articulate the hollowness with a vowel, or with the conjuring of a body through sound and space. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's what the invoking is doing. The incantation is doing for me. And invoking, like using it to actually map out, to cite, to source a body onto the page, or into the mind, or into the head, the ear of the reader.
Yeah, no, I think that makes complete and total sense, yo. I think that it also shows up when, I think for me most prominently, as I was like moving through the book, I'm trying to remember, I believe this is from one of the translineage poems, forgive me if I'm incorrect, but there's a line in there where you say, she kissed me nigga hard, and it's all one word. I was especially so in love with those moments of invention, because I think that as you were moving through your answer earlier and saying, there's not a word for what systemic violence feels like, there's not a word for what it feels like to be Black, I found that it helped me find a phrase. And one of the things that I love in this book, which is that you are inventing language that English had no interest in, because it knows about, like, the invention of such a word would be to like undermine its relationship with power in and of itself. English had no interest in having a word like nigga hard, or like so many of the other ways that you're able to like mash two words together, and in the intersection of those things to create from nothing something. So I was just really in love with that concept as I was thinking about your answer.
Yeah, and the truth of the matter is, like, English is a failure. English will continually fail because it has a legacy that is a part of imperialism and capitalism and structural violence, and it also is utilized in Western culture, is utilized to continue to perpetuate harm, continue to hold, to standardize all the isms. And so in attempting to write, I'm already trying to figure out how to break open this sort of like steel door that really that holds like within it so much violence, and create new things from fragments, and trying to do a little bit of that, like a little bit of conjuring in that, because there's hard and there's nigga hard, and like nigga hard means tenderness, but a particular kind of masculinity and a particular kind of innocence and all of that, and that captures, that informs what kind of hardness is at work, and kind of like discards the old understanding of hard, or at least I hope so, for that little moment on that little line. It's like
it did for me.
Yeah,
that's exactly what it did. Exactly. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But
no, you're fine. You're fine.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it did for me. I was so in love with that moment, because like in understanding flooded. There was no need for there to be any more explanation, and you lent no further explanation. And that's one of the things that I love about your relationship with audacity in this book, which is why I was out here like shouting on the other end, like one of the Rough Riders, when you hit that line in Gumbo Ya Ya. I wanted to ask, kind of in that same vein, about so much of the, like, it's such a joy to read through this book. I know that I keep prefacing every question with saying that, but still I haven't seen you in a grip, and
I know. I already know. I was like, no, it's because we haven't even gotten to talk about it. I'm here for it. I love it. Thank you.
It's such a joy. Like, I'm seeing, like, and in terms of just like, you and I come from like a lot of like similar schools, and also some very like different schools in terms of like where like our influences are coming from. So I'm seeing so much of Jane Cortez, and I'm seeing Patricia Smith, and I'm seeing Dinez, and I'm seeing like all of these folks, this and that you bring along with you. And I was wondering if you had any, if the book had any unlikely ancestors that you wanted to shine a light for, or maybe unexpected ancestors that you wanted to shine a light for.
Yeah, I think, well, I think what the book, I will say what I think the book did, and what I'm coming to understand is that the book schooled me on legacies that I wasn't even checking. Like, not that I wasn't checking for them, but I was ignorant of them and not, and disconnected even as I was practicing a thing, which I think is very green of me. It's just that I'm a new poet out here in these streets, and I'm still learning, I'm still getting my chops or whatever. But like this idea of alternative poetics and the specifically Black canon inside of alternative poetics and like sound poetics. And I think like it's so like funny, not funny, but like just kismet that Douglas Kearney was the judge for the prize the year that I, this year, and in 2020. And the idea that Douglas Kearney is a part of this school of, sound poetics, just being getting into the room or get into the bones of an idea, of a word, of a thought with sound and with displacement of text, and how there's people doing this in real life, in real time, that I hadn't made my way, into their bodies of work fully. I knew Douglas Kearney, but talking with Douglas was like having all of these conversations about like the long legacy, the history of like Black folks doing it, and how there's been a decision in the canon for like alternative poetics to be exclusionary to Black folks. And I'm late to that conversation, and learning so much about how even our Blackness is Blackness, like even our most authentic, impulses, poetic impulses are encoded with, our Black, the Black legacy of what we're doing on the page. And that's been such a gift to be like, yeah, let me read and let me get back to learning, and let me be a student of the world that already knew me and met me while I was still articulating myself, before I'd even really met myself.
Word to that, yeah. I had another thing. There's so many great like long sequence poems in here. And I was so curious to hear your thoughts about like, how did you find kind of the flow that you wanted them to have in the book? Because I feel like that's often like something that we don't get to talk about quite as much when you have multiple kind of long form multi-sequence poems, right? Like, how does one balance those across the course of a manuscript? How you hold them in conversation with everything else? So I wanted to hear more about that if you want to talk.
I think I'm gonna be very real. It started out as me being really afraid of the long poem, and like just like being able to like undulate on a thought and a poem past a couple pages was so intimidating, because I was like, how do you keep the reader's attention? how do you make sure that it's compelling? What's going on? And I just had to keep challenging myself to stay with a thing, especially with I think what Gumbo Ya Ya is doing so often is returning. There's this concept of corkscrew time, which was a concept that was gifted to me by a friend who is a spiritual mentor and guide in Afro-Indigenous practice, and West African tradition and Creole tradition, and was talking about how like time is a helix, and it turns on itself and returns to itself. And that was like a framework that I think I tried to employ throughout the book. And so the return, I challenged myself to kind of, if I couldn't do, if it felt too large to do the crown of sonnets, right? Because that's every poet's like, I'm gonna do a crown of sonnets. And I was like, bitch, I'm not that bad. I'm not that bad yet. But maybe how can we use return as a challenge, as a modality of a praxis in the text? And so the series began really with the transhistoricals in the book, which is a form that I just decided we was just gonna publish, even though I don't really know what's happening in the book just yet. I was like, I don't really know what a transhistorical is, but let's continue to chew on this. And the transhistoricals were really just chewing on how to articulate location and to articulate like the internal feelings, the internalized understanding and nuances of Black feminists without telling someone who isn't in the know how to be in the know, because we ain't trying to, I don't want my Black femininity gentrified. That's weird. So I think the transhistoricals were a way to return to concepts that are through lines without betraying the sacredness or the intentionality or the tenderness of what it means to be among kindred and only kindred folks. Yeah, depending on how you read it, it could be really artful and masterful, or it could be like, well, bitch, you already said that. so and in that a little bit of vulnerability, like, well, I know I said this. Let's assess from another angle this concept, and just kind of hoping that the reader would be in the process of trust with me in those returns.
Indeed, yeah. I definitely read it as that, for sure, that it was about like, it wasn't about repetition for the sake of repetition. It was repetition for the sake of reconsideration.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like that is part of like the whole process of having like an accountable imagination for like, what can we see going forward, right?
Yeah.
That like, I think that's part of the reason that like empire, linear time, besties, because if you can live with a world in which an event happens, the event has stopped happening, and you can start to believe that it has no like impact or results, and instead the hyper level of attention to detail that you place, like all of that is care, all of that is like an ecstatic imagining for us, which I felt was so ever present. I'm using us like very, very broadly here in this context, but that's because I'm trying to find wayward experiments. That was like wayward experiments to me is just such a wonderful entry into what it means to imagine ecstatically on behalf of Black people. And I adored it so much for that concept. And that for me is, I feel, such a great example, like living, breathing example of what it means to reconsider. Because there's this kind of imagining of salve and salvation and safe space and like and how we can be harbingers for each other, right? Like it's a concept that you come to again and again, but I feel like this one, something very different is happening in terms of like the mode of how it's considered, the angle from which it's considered. I don't know, maybe I'm off.
No, I think Wayward Experiments is a place where, there's this idea, there's the tough part of like creating a safe space or creating a hush harbor or you know, quiet spot for Black femmes and Black folks across the gender spectrum to kind of like gather in the text, or like with an idea or a concept in the text. And a part of that is having to push folks who aren't a part of the we, word to you, and what you just said, a part of that we, right? Like push them out, hold them at a distance with tenderness, with gratitude, but like there's something different happening here that, yes, you know, thank you for buying the book and reading it. Also, this moment is for a different we, one that you are not a part of. And I think that some of that happens by force, some of that happens with tenderness. And I think by the time I got to Wayward Experiments, it was like, okay, so now that it's just us here, there are sure other readers, other eyes, other folks internalize, like, you know, kind of chewing on the work, but how can I do this and hope with some tenderness and love for those who are a part of the we, and do some radical imagining with just us. Yeah, that return was one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's just gorgeously done.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, it gets to a thought that I had as you articulated it so beautifully about where these direct addresses are going towards. So I think that's also part of like that whole notion of invocation, right? Is knowing to whom one is calling or not knowing to whom one is calling, and how you've navigated through that within this has just been like such a fascinating journey to be following. I'm trying, like, I know there's going to be at least one question that I geeked out so hard that I forgot about, that I forgot to ask about, and I'm going to be end up kicking myself, but also I don't want us to. Now I'm just loving Georgia Me. The curve of the lines was such a brilliant, gorgeous choice.
Shout out to Alex at UPitt.
Yo, forever putting on for the people.
Listen, Alex for the people. I feel like and that's another thing that I love about the book process. I feel like the book that UPitt was sent after the prize was like not as, I'll say, fugitive in its space making and in the way that it looks on the page. And then I had like a couple conversations with Doug Kearney, and I was like talking like with, you know, friends and like sitting with the book, and I was like, okay, so we need to change everything. I went to Alex and I was like, you can tell me no, I hope you don't, but I think that we need to, I don't know, change the order, the shape, and Alex was like, I'm sorry, what? But ultimately I think he trusted me, and we had a process that was just like, yeah, let's make this the best Miyama Jamma that we can. And yeah, I think it needed that last touch of like, let's bring movement to the line, let's bring fluidity, let's bring voice and breath and all of that in some embodied ways on the page, so that the text feels alive with all the Black girls with an X. Yeah,
I absolutely love that. I want to ask you so much about fugitive aesthetic, but I also want to make sure that I'm not like cutting off like any like Q&A time that we have.
Sure.
So, I mean, feel free to jump in with more questions, Julian, but I have one that an anonymous attendee submitted that I wanted to make sure we got to. So they wonder, what comes first, the epigraph or the poem, and in what ways are y'all changing how epigraphs can be employed? So question for both of you, if you don't mind.
Oh, I love that. I think the answer is yes, and I think there are some times when something that I come across in the world, a song lyric, a a, you know, interview or something from a documentary or something that I'm reading, whatever ends up becoming an epigraph, at first it's just a thing stuck in my craw, as one of my kinfolk would say, like just stuck in me, won't let me go, and it informs, you know, a poem, or it informs the next version of a poem, the next, you know, the next editing process of the poem, and there's a journey with me and the thing that I'm writing and the thing that is informing how I'm writing the thing, and it's the three of us on the boat together. And at some point I realized, oh, you know, I think that I add epigraphs when I realized that the epigraph and me co-authored the poem. And so that happens at some point throughout. The only time that I ever knew before the poem like was finished or at in some final form was, there's a poem in the book called I Observed the Sabbath Like an Ill Verse, and it pulls from a verse, a feature verse that No Name did on a Chance the Rapper album song. And the only reason I knew from jump that that would be an epigraph is because I listened to that verse. I listened to those 47 seconds, probably 100 or 200 times a day for like a month straight while I was writing this one poem. And I was like, well, yeah, we got to give it up for No Name. We have to add her to the mix because I don't even know. I think she wrote the poem more than I did at that point.
I love that an epigraph is like a co-author for a poem. I'm going to start kind of thinking of them that way. Leon, what about you? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, for sure. I was also just trying to find which of the ones it was. Oh yeah, I love this epigraph, dog. I love this epigraph. But it also is such a great encapsulation of the thing that I was going to say, which is like, yo, as much as I'm loving this co-author thing, for me it feels kind of like sometimes I wonder how much of the poet I am is trying to avenge the rapper I could never be. And to be perfectly honest, like I think sometimes about like epigraphs as like, this is my opportunity to bind sound to this, right? I think almost like, oh word, like here's Sad Nigga Manifesto featuring Frank Ocean, because I was writing that song or writing that poem listening to the Wise Man song, which was never actually on the Django movie, but it's a gorgeous fucking song that I just couldn't stop listening to while I was doing this. I was like, how can I bring this sound along with me? How can I like thread this along? How can I thread this along with it? I used to be way more like loose about epigraphs until Kiyose got on my ass about it. But that was also because I kept putting them in italics, which is, I think he said something to the effect of like, it's just giving people permission to skip over it. And I was like, that's fascinating. But to me, epigraphs have always been this opportunity where I'm like, I want this person singing alongside me while I'm doing this. So yeah, ultimately epigraphs end up being that for me. Also group pieces.
Musical framing.
Yeah, a musical or like lyrical accompaniment.
I love that. And I don't know, I feel like it makes sense because poems or really anything it's not made in a vacuum. So why not kind of like set the stage and kind of, I don't know, help the reader kind of get to where you were when you were writing it. It doesn't seem like there are any other questions. I think our attendees, like me, we're just kind of just so into the conversation and enjoying it. So but this is our last chance. If anyone has one, no pressure, but this would be a good time. But you know, in the meantime, I just want to, I mean, I could do this like again and again. I wouldn't get tired of it. Thank you both for taking the time to talk craft with us and to read poetry. I realize it's been so long since I've gotten to go to a poetry reading, so I'm selfishly so grateful that I got to attend. And yeah, and I've been working my way through the book since Chloe sent it to me, and it's been wonderful. But it's such a revelation to hear you read it too, and it got me thinking. If either of y'all want to answer this, and then we can wrap it up. So, there's been all this talk mostly about journalism and kind of like recording, podcasts and where that line is, and that new, I forget the app, it's called Autumn, I think. So it'll like read like New York Times pieces to you. But I wonder if you think that's something that might start to happen in the poetry world, these kind of like, a close relationship to the audiobook and the written word, or I don't know. I'm just like, you don't have to respond to any.
No,
of that.
I selfishly hope so. I'm a slam poet at heart and by birth at this point. So I think the sound of the words changes like what they mean and what they do or what they can do. So I think that's especially why I'm like, poets must read their own audiobooks. You must be the voice doing your own audiobook, because someone else doing it changes it into an entirely different poem. So yeah, I mean, selfishly, I hope so. That would be dope, I think.
I mean, I don't want to say hearing you read it like changed the poem for me, but it deepened it in so many ways. And I don't know, I don't think I'll be able to like read it the same way anymore. And I think that's so powerful.
Oh, I love that.
I want more folks to be able to have that. Yeah, sorry, Juliana, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh no, you're so good. I was just saying ideal. That's what you want from a reading, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would also love for that to be a thing that happened. I feel like there's like, it would require so much industry stuff to happen in order for there to be like some actual respect put on poetry's name. But
yeah, it's true.
I feel like I genuinely feel that's like the vast majority of why it doesn't happen. It's just that like folks presume that like poetry doesn't sell, so there's not actually an audience for this when there's abundant evidence to the contrary. But don't get me, don't let me get started. We'll be here for another hour.
I think there's definitely an appetite for it, but so we'll see. But so it seems like there aren't any other questions, so perhaps we should let everybody get to dinner or whatever else is going on for y'all this evening. But we do have copies of Gumbo Ya Ya, a nice big stack on the front table at the bookstore. If you haven't picked one up yet, I would encourage you to do it. Preferably at Square Books or whatever your preferred indie is. And little guilt trip, we can't do author events in person, virtual, hybrid, whatever else we dream up without your support. So if it is at all possible for you to buy this book, and I certainly hope it is, please support us. Please support Aurielle and the Pit Poetry series. I put the link to purchase it along with Julian's work and a pre-order link for his middle grade novel. But thank y'all and our attendees for spending this hour with us. I'm so grateful for it. And I hope to welcome you both to Oxford soon when the world is a little more normal.
Oh yes, please.
Would love that.
Stop by anytime.
That sounds awesome. Well, thanks so much for having us. And Julian, thanks for coming to hang out with me and talk about this little book I wrote.
Thank you for writing it, and in so doing, making a better world, as you do with all other things that you do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations to you both, and take care.
Thanks so much.
Peace, homies.
No easy way to end it, so I'm just gonna do it.